13 News at 5 begins with breaking news in the Delphi murders trial.
In the last 2.5 hours, a jury found Richard Allen guilty on all 4 counts of the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. Their families have waited more than 7.5 years for justice for Abby and Libby.
And now they will wait a little longer for his sentencing on December 20th. We've got live team coverage for you tonight.
Now let's start with Anne Marie Tiernan, who's outside the Carroll County Courthouse in Delphi. Anne?
Well, good evening. I'm joined by Bob Siegel and Emily Longnecker, who have been heading up our coverage here. You know, this jury first reported for jury duty 29 days ago, and after 4 days of deliberations, after they were able to get this case, they handed down a verdict this afternoon. It was around 2:20. Bob Siegel was fortunate to be in the courtroom to be able to give us an eyewitness account.
Yeah, and there were only 12 of these media passes that the media was granted to be able to be in the front row. I was about 15 feet behind Richard Allen as the verdict was read. And when it was read, it was very fast. Guilty, 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 guilty. The jurors were only in the courtroom for about 3 minutes. That's how long it took for them to hand over their verdict form to the judge, for her to read the verdict, and for them to exit the courtroom. The judge was concerned, I think, that there would be huge outbursts. Obviously, these horrific murders, the families of the victims in the courtroom, the defendant's family there. Judge Gall was concerned that there might be some outbursts. So before the jury even came in, the judge made an announcement to those in the courtroom. She said to everyone, this has been a long haul. Regardless of what the verdict is, people aren't going to be happy. And she invited folks to take their unhappiness outside of the courtroom after the verdict was read. I can tell you, while I was in the courtroom, when that verdict was read, I was looking directly at Richard Allen. He showed very little emotion. It wasn't until a few minutes later that he looked back at his wife and his mother, and he said, "Are you okay?" The families of Abby and Libby, they were holding hands. They clenched each other's hands. Libby German's grandmother, she was holding the arm of her husband, and when the verdict was read, she put her head on his shoulder and they hugged. It was also very emotional on the part of the law enforcement officers who have been working on this case. The superintendent of Indiana State Police, he put his head down in his hands when the verdict was read. He started crying, and afterward we saw Jerry Holman, one of the lead investigators on the case for Indiana State Police. He went up and he gave the prosecutor, Nick McLeland, he gave him a kiss and a hug. He was so relieved at this verdict that the jury had rendered. We saw the families leaving the courtroom afterward. Again, they were hugging. They were very pleased. The guilty verdict, 4 guilty verdicts, that is what they were hoping for, and that is what they got today here inside the courthouse here in Delphi.
So much scrutiny over all the investigation, over the legal process, everything. So many critics watching online. What are some of the next steps now, Emily?
Well, you know, interesting when you're talking about reaction. Kathy Allen, when she was leaving the court, said this is not over at all. And we know it's not over in the legal process. Richard Allen will be back here at the Carroll County Courthouse December 20th for sentencing. Then the defense, after that sentence, they have 30 days to file a notice of appeal, and that notice will then get the court reporter to start typing a transcript of the trial. Once that transcript is done, the defense has 30 days to file a brief on Richard Allen's behalf. Then the state has 30 days to file their brief on their behalf. So from there, the case goes to the Court of Appeals. Last half hour, our legal expert Katie Jackson-Lindsay saying, you know, there's potential for this to go to the Indiana Supreme Court. We don't know. We're a long way from that. And interestingly enough, I was in a local establishment here after the verdict was read and getting a soda, and noticed a sign that's been up on the wall there for many, many years, and it says, "Abby and Libby, justice will be served." And here, it is served today. For at least many people feel that way, definitely. So.
Yes. Unfortunately, nothing will bring them back. No. 2 families lost these young girls, and we always want to keep that front and center throughout our coverage. Back to you, Scott and Felicia.
All right, Anne Marie, thanks so much to you and Bob and Emily, doing a great job out there in Delphi for us. And our team coverage continues tonight at 5 here in studio.
Yes, we have our 13 News legal expert, Katie Jackson Lindsay, joining us. And Katie, we want to dive right in here. That gag order is expected to be in place until sentencing, at least, which is December 20th. Once the judge lifts that gag order, are people just free to speak about the case at will? Are there any parameters that extend past the gag order?
Well, as it relates to the defense, at least, there's always the requirement of attorney-client privilege. So defense attorneys are never have an absolute, green light to go out and talk about the details of the case or their communication with their client. The prosecution, on the other hand, does have an opportunity to speak more about the facts, about trial strategy, about any of those things. But I would expect, because the appeals process still has to play out, that all the parties would be pretty prudent about what they're saying publicly at any point from here forward.
And then the jury, what about them being able to speak?
So the jury has a right to speak to anyone they want to about their process, but they also have an absolute right to say they don't want to speak to anyone. And I think what you usually find after homicide cases is that it's usually a mixed bag. Even when we go back on a homicide case that wasn't high profile or didn't get this much media attention, sometimes jurors just don't want to talk about it. They just want to go back to their lives and continue about their business.
Katie, what grounds might the defense have to go ahead and file an appeal here?
Well, anything that they filed prior to trial, any of those pretrial motions where they received a negative ruling from Judge Cole, they can bring any of those issues up on appeal. So one thing that's been a big thing that we all have had our eyes glued to is the issue about whether or not they could bring in evidence of alternative suspects. We should expect an appeal on that. Almost any homicide case comes with an appeal on sufficiency of the evidence, meaning was there enough evidence to convict Richard Allen at all? And so we should expect an appeal on that. We may see some of the other issues that didn't get as much attention that the defense raised throughout the trial, even some of the things that were raised during the trial, some of the motions they filed. We should expect appeals to be raised on each of those issues.
What are the defense attorneys saying to Richard Allen and his family tonight?
Well, I think this first day is just a moment of comfort. This is really hard to process for defense attorneys. It's really hard to process for defendants. And Richard Allen has gone back to a holding cell at this point. And so I think in this moment, it's hard to really talk to your client about the business of it. But they are talking to him just about comforting things that any human would say to a human. But they also are probably talking to him about the next steps in terms of preparing for a sentencing hearing, and then even beyond that, what the appeals process would look like, the things that we're discussing today. But I would imagine it's hard for him to process right away.
All right, Katie Jackson Lindsay's been with us throughout this entire trial, and she'll be rejoining us tonight as our coverage continues. Katie, thanks so much. And we're going to continue bringing you live updates on this trial as we move forward. In fact, tonight, our Delphi debrief will continue at 10 o'clock, and you can see that on WTHR Plus, finding that app on Apple TV, Roku, and Fire Stick. Angela?
Scott, plenty of sunshine today. Temperatures are in the upper 50s and low 60s, 59 degrees Morris Reservoir. We have 61 Noblesville and in Greensburg, currently 60 Crawfordsville and 58 in Connorsville. Temperatures will fall through the 50s over the next several hours, drop into the 40s by 9 p.m. Eventual low temperatures, middle and upper 30s. Cold enough. We're going to need the jackets tomorrow morning. 38 at 8 a.m., 46 at noon. Highs tomorrow only in the low 50s. This is closer to where we should be for this time of year. By the way, the low 50s, about 10 cooler than what we had today. So want to make sure you're prepared for a cool down. Also want to make sure you're prepared ahead of time of a midweek rain chance. It won't be here tonight, tomorrow, or most of Wednesday, but what you see out to our west will get here Wednesday evening with some of the steadiest rain falling Wednesday night into early Thursday. I'll have the local timeline and your forecast for the week ahead in a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you in a little bit, Angela. Thanks. Tonight at 5, family and friends are mourning the death of a student at Tri-West High School who was killed in an early morning crash.
Our Anna Chalker reports on the investigation from Hendricks County tonight.
What started as a quiet Monday morning in Pittsboro ended with neighbors cleaning up from a crash. Around 8:30, the Hendricks County Sheriff's Office says a driver crashed their car in this area of County Road 900 North and died. That driver, a high schooler at Tri-West High School. This is the yard where that crash ended, and a neighbor told me off camera that the driver came off of the road, hit their neighbor's parked truck over here, and then was pushed all the way to the side of their house. That neighbor tells me this was a very traumatic scene, and when the car hit the house, they rushed out to help. They say while there have been several crashes on this street before, this is the first deadly one. You can still see the tire marks and damage left behind. The Northwest Hendricks School District released a statement saying, in part, "The loss of this young life deeply saddens us, and our thoughts are with the students' friends, family, and loved ones. When a tragedy occurs, it affects not only that school, but the entire school district family, and we grieve with the students, staff, and families affected by this loss." In Pittsburgh, Anna Chalker, 13 News.
Thank you, Anna. And the Hendricks County Sheriff's Office is investigating what led to this crash. Once we get any updates, we'll be sure to share them with you or online at WTHR.com. And the Shelby County Sheriff's Office is investigating a crash which took the life of a 6-year-old boy. James Hodge was a first-grade student in the Northwestern Consolidated School District. He died in the crash along State Road 44 near County Road 600 East Saturday night. The crash shut the rural road down for hours. Investigators are still trying to figure out what led up to that crash.